Have you ever met someone whose presence alone makes you sit up straighter, choose your words carefully, and even rethink your excuses? That isn't because they're louder, richer, or more famous. It's because their mind is so strong, it intimidates weakness. Imagine building a mind like that, a mind that doesn't bend to fear, doubt, or failure. Today, I'm going to show you how to build a mind so strong it scares people. The voice inside your head is the loudest and most consistent influence you will ever encounter in your life. It doesn't matter how many motivational speeches you listen to, how many mentors you seek, or how much external validation you get. None of it will outweigh the daily conversations you have with yourself. Every morning when you wake up, there is a dialogue already waiting for you. Some people open their eyes and immediately hear a whisper of doubt. You're not enough. Today is going to be hard. Why even bother? Others wake up and hear a fire ignite in their spirit. This is your day. You are capable. You are powerful. The difference between these two mental environments is not luck. It is training. A strong mind is not given. It is built by mastering that inner dialogue until it no longer sabotages you but strengthens you. Most people underestimate how much power their inner voice has over their actions. If your mind constantly feeds you excuses, your body will follow the path of least resistance. You'll hit snooze, you'll skip the workout, you'll delay the project, you'll avoid the uncomfortable conversations. That is how people lose battles before they even begin. Not because they lack skill or opportunity, but because they allowed their inner dialogue to talk them out of showing up fully. On the other hand, when your inner voice becomes disciplined, when it is trained to command action instead of negotiate laziness, you begin to see yourself move with a force others cannot comprehend. Suddenly, challenges that once drained you start fueling you, because your inner dialogue is no longer an enemy pulling you back, but a general pushing you forward. The mind is like a courtroom. Every day, thoughts of doubt and thoughts of belief present their arguments. The prosecutor says, "You're going to fail, you don't have enough experience, you're not as talented as others." The defense rises up and says, "You have everything you need, you've survived worse, you are equipped and capable." The verdict you live with is based on which side you let speak the loudest. If you never take control of this courtroom, negativity will dominate because the mind naturally leans toward fear and self-preservation. To master your inner dialogue, you must become the judge who disciplines what kind of thoughts are allowed to present evidence in your mind. You cannot stop negative thoughts from knocking at the door, but you can stop them from taking a seat and building a case. This mastery requires awareness. Many people are prisoners of their inner voice because they don't even notice it's controlling them. They accept every thought as truth instead of questioning it. When you hear your inner voice say, "You can't do this," stop and ask, who said that? Is it fact or is it fear? Most times you'll realize it's nothing more than a reflex from years of conditioning, not an accurate reflection of reality. Becoming conscious of your inner dialogue is the first step. Once you are aware, you can begin to reshape it deliberately. You can rewrite the script from one of defeat to one of dominance. Reprogramming your inner dialogue isn't about lying to yourself or repeating empty affirmations. It's about intentionally feeding your mind the truth that empowers action. For example, instead of saying, "I've never done this before, so I probably can't," train your mind to say, "I've never done this before, so I'm about to learn something powerful." Instead of saying, "I'm too tired to keep going," teach your mind to say, "Tiredness is proof I'm building strength, so I'll keep going." This shift is not about pretending difficulties don't exist. It's about reframing them so that you always remain in the position of power, not weakness. That's what separates those who quit from those who conquer. Another key to mastering your inner dialogue is consistency. You cannot speak life over yourself once and expect transformation. Just like a muscle grows with repeated training, your inner voice becomes strong with repeated discipline. Every time you catch yourself slipping into negative self-talk and you redirect it, you are doing a mental rep. Over time, your inner dialogue transforms from being a critic to being a coach, from being a saboteur to being a strategist. When that transformation happens, people notice. They see a confidence in you that can't be explained by external success alone, because it's not built on circumstance. It's built on inner mastery. The strength of your inner dialogue also determines how you react when life hits hard. Anybody can sound confident when things are going well, but when the deal falls through, when the people you trusted walk away, when your plans collapse, that's when the real test of your inner voice begins. If in those moments your dialogue turns against you, saying, "See, you knew you weren't good enough, you knew this wouldn't last," then you'll collapse under the weight of circumstances. But if your dialogue is mastered, it will speak life even in the storm. This is a setup for something greater. This is not the end. This is where your strength is revealed. That kind of mindset doesn't just survive adversity, it thrives in it. And when others see you stand tall in situations that would have broken them, they realize your strength comes from something deeper than talent. It comes from the power of your mind. Mastering your inner dialogue is not optional if you want to build a mind so strong it intimidates weakness. It is the foundation of all mental strength, because every decision, every action, every risk, and every victory starts with the voice inside your head. If you don't command that voice, it will command you. And if it commands you toward fear, doubt, and excuses, then no matter how gifted you are, you will remain trapped in small living. But if you master it, if you discipline it, if you train it to speak belief and power, then there is no environment you cannot dominate, no obstacle you cannot endure, and no opponent you cannot outlast. The true test of mental strength is not how you perform when things are comfortable, but how you carry yourself when the heat is turned up, when the pressure is high, and when everything in you screams to quit. A strong mind is not built in moments of ease. It is forged in fire, in the uncomfortable, in the situations where giving up would be the easy option, but pushing through is the only choice. Most people avoid discomfort like it is the enemy, but the truth is, discomfort is the training ground where greatness is born. If you are always seeking comfort, you will always live small. If you train your mind to endure discomfort, you build a kind of strength that intimidates those who have never learned how to suffer productively. From the time we are young, we are conditioned to run from pain. We look for the softest bed, the easiest path, the shortest route. Society tells us that comfort equals happiness, and so we chase the easiest jobs, the quickest results, the fastest gratification. But here is the truth. Every meaningful victory you admire was born in discomfort. Athletes don't rise to the top by staying in their comfort zone. They embrace sweat, exhaustion, and failure until their bodies and minds adapt to levels others cannot tolerate. Entrepreneurs don't build empires by staying comfortable. They risk rejection, long nights, and uncertainty until they build a resilience that no setback can destroy. Leaders don't become great by hiding from discomfort. They walk straight into challenges that others avoid and endure the weight until their character becomes unshakable. When you train your mind to endure discomfort, you are not just building patience. You are building resilience that multiplies in every area of life. Take physical training as an example. When you push your body past the point of comfort in exercise, it is not just your muscles that grow stronger. It is your mental capacity to endure. The pain teaches you that you can go further than you thought, that you can last longer than you believed, that you are capable of pushing through the barrier of "I can't." That lesson carries over into business, relationships, and personal growth. If you learn to endure discomfort in one area, you'll find yourself equipped to endure it everywhere. The weak mind always looks for the exit sign. The moment discomfort appears, it begins negotiating excuses. "This isn't for me. It's too much. I'll try again later." But the strong mind has trained itself to hear discomfort and say, "This is where growth begins." Imagine a blacksmith hammering steel. The steel cannot become strong until it has been subjected to fire and relentless pounding. Your mind is the same. Without discomfort, without the fire of difficulty, without the hammer of challenge, it will remain soft, fragile, and easily broken. But once it has endured, it becomes something others cannot bend or break. One of the greatest lies people believe is that success eliminates discomfort. In reality, success multiplies it. The higher you climb, the more pressure you face. The more responsibility you carry, the greater the discomfort you must endure. If your mind has not been trained, you will crumble when the weight of greater opportunity comes. This is why people sabotage themselves, not because they weren't talented, but because their tolerance for discomfort was too low. If you want to be trusted with more, you must train yourself to handle more, and that training comes through discomfort. Enduring discomfort also teaches you control. When you can stay calm while everything in you wants to panic, you gain power over yourself that few ever experience. Think about how many people make destructive decisions just because they couldn't handle being uncomfortable for a moment. They quit because the work got hard. They walked away from relationships because patience was tested. They settled for mediocrity because excellence demanded more than they were willing to give. But when you train your mind to endure discomfort, you learn to delay gratification, to hold steady, to stand firm when the easy way out looks tempting. That kind of control sets you apart, because it shows you are not a slave to your feelings, but a master of them. The process of training your mind to endure discomfort must be intentional. You cannot expect strength if you always choose the path of least resistance. Start small. Deliberately put yourself in situations that test your patience, your discipline, your persistence. Wake up earlier than you want to. Push yourself in workouts when you want to stop. Take on challenges that intimidate you. Say no to the comforts that make you soft. Every time you endure, you are teaching your mind a new standard. You are rewriting the definition of what is possible for you. You are proving to yourself that you can survive what others run from. This endurance creates an aura of strength that others feel. When people see you thrive in environments that break most, they can't help but respect you. It makes them question their own limits. It challenges their own excuses, and it intimidates their weaknesses. Because strength that is proven in discomfort carries a weight of authority that words alone can never achieve. People listen to those who have endured, not to those who have only read about endurance. That is why the strongest leaders, the most respected warriors, and the most influential individuals are always those who have scars to prove they've walked through fire and survived. And the beauty of enduring discomfort is that it changes your perspective on life. Things that once seemed unbearable now feel normal. Tasks that once felt impossible now feel like warm-ups. The bar keeps rising, and with it your confidence grows. What breaks others becomes your baseline. That shift makes you unstoppable, because no matter what challenge comes, your first instinct is not to run, but to stand, to face, to push through. That mindset is rare, and it is powerful. It creates a reputation that precedes you, a person who cannot be broken, a person who thrives where others shrink, a person whose mind is so strong that even discomfort itself loses its power. One of the heaviest chains that keeps people from reaching their true potential is the need for approval. From the moment we are children, we are conditioned to crave acceptance from parents, from teachers, from peers. We learn to measure our worth through the eyes of others, and that pattern often follows us into adulthood. We begin to shape our lives not around who we truly are, but around who we believe others want us to be. This dependency becomes a prison, because as long as your happiness is tied to the opinions of others, you are never truly free. Detaching from the opinions of others does not mean becoming arrogant or dismissive. It means developing the strength to walk in your truth without being enslaved by validation or destroyed by criticism. A mind that depends on approval will always be fragile, but a mind that has detached from it becomes unshakable. When you live for approval, you unconsciously surrender your power. You let others dictate how high you reach, how bold you become, how much risk you take. One compliment can inflate you, but one insult can deflate you. That's a dangerous way to live, because it means your confidence is never stable. It rises and falls with the shifting moods of people who may not even know who they truly are. The truth is, most people's opinions are inconsistent, uninformed, and often rooted in their own insecurities. If you build your life on that shaky foundation, you will always feel unstable. The moment you detach, however, you reclaim authority over your own identity. You stop asking, "What will they think?" and start asking, "What is true to me?" That shift creates a freedom and strength that cannot be manipulated. The need for approval is often disguised as humility or politeness. People say they don't want to upset others. They want to fit in. They want to be liked. But beneath that surface is often fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of standing out. Fear of being misunderstood. And that fear is what weakens the mind. A strong mind understands that rejection is not the end, that standing out is necessary, and that being misunderstood is often the price of being authentic. Every person who has achieved something extraordinary was, at some point, misunderstood, criticized, or doubted. If they had been controlled by opinions, they never would have persevered long enough to see their vision manifest. Detaching from opinions doesn't mean you ignore all feedback. Wisdom can be found in listening, but the difference is this. You evaluate feedback, you don't absorb it blindly. You learn to filter what is useful and discard what is toxic. A strong mind knows how to discern between constructive advice that helps growth and destructive noise that seeks to pull you down. Without this discernment, you risk becoming a puppet, controlled by the strings of every opinion that comes your way. With it, you stand as a fortress, receiving what is helpful, but never being shaken by what is hollow. One of the greatest advantages of detaching from opinions is the energy it frees. Think of how much time people waste worrying about what others think. They edit themselves in conversations. They hesitate before taking action. They lose sleep over imagined judgments. That energy could have been invested in building skills, pursuing visions, and living with passion. When you let go of the burden of approval, you redirect all that energy into creation, into progress, into becoming who you were designed to be. Suddenly life feels lighter, not because challenges disappear, but because the weight of unnecessary concern is lifted. That lightness translates into confidence, and that confidence intimidates those who are still chained to the thoughts of others. Another layer of this detachment is learning that people's opinions about you often have little to do with you and everything to do with them. People judge through the lens of their own fears, limitations, and desires. When someone says, "You can't do that," they are often projecting their own belief that they can't do it. When someone says that's a bad idea, it may simply be because they are too afraid to take risks themselves. If you internalize these opinions, you allow their limitations to become your own. But when you detach, you recognize their words as reflections of their inner world, not your destiny. That recognition keeps you from shrinking to fit inside their boundaries. Detachment also strengthens identity. When you are no longer tossed around by public opinion, you develop a deep clarity about who you are and what you stand for. That clarity radiates strength. People may not always agree with you, but they will respect the conviction you carry. In fact, the most respected individuals in history were rarely the most liked during their time. They were often controversial, criticized, even hated, yet their unshakable identity allowed them to endure. Over time, those who criticized faded into obscurity, but those who walked in truth became legends. This is the power of detachment. It doesn't just protect you in the moment, it cements your legacy in the long run. There is also a psychological freedom in knowing you cannot control what people think anyway. No matter how much you try to please, there will always be critics. No matter how careful you are, there will always be someone who disapproves. Realizing this truth is liberating, because it means you can stop wasting time on an impossible mission. Instead, you can focus on the only thing you truly can control, living authentically, giving your best, and walking in integrity. That focus produces peace of mind, and peace of mind is the foundation of true power. A mind detached from opinions is a mind that intimidates. Why? Because most people are controlled by them. When they see someone who is free, who speaks with conviction without fear of being judged, it confronts their own insecurity. It makes them uncomfortable because it reveals their own dependency. That is why detachment not only protects you, it also inspires or unsettles others. Either way, it sets you apart. It places you in a position of strength that cannot be bought, copied, or faked. It is a strength only earned by releasing the grip of external validation and standing firmly in self-mastery. In a world drowning in distractions, focus has become one of the rarest and most valuable assets a person can possess. Every second, notifications are pinging, advertisements are competing for your attention, conversations are pulling you in multiple directions, and opportunities are flashing before your eyes. Most people are scattered, starting 100 things and finishing none, living in a constant state of mental clutter. Yet the people who rise above, the ones who seem unstoppable, are not always the most talented or the most resourceful. They are the ones who have mastered the art of focus. They understand that a distracted mind is a weak mind, but a focused mind is a weapon. To build unshakable focus is to train your mind to shut out the noise, lock in on the target, and refuse to be pulled away until the mission is complete. Focus is not simply about paying attention for a short burst of time. It is about cultivating the discipline to sustain attention when it becomes uncomfortable. Anyone can concentrate for a few minutes when motivation is high, but very few can continue focusing when boredom sets in, when obstacles appear, or when progress feels slow. This is why focus is so intimidating, because it requires the kind of mental stamina most people never develop. It is the ability to say, no matter what else is happening around me, this is where my energy is going. That single-minded intensity is what separates high achievers from average performers. The first step to building unshakable focus is clarity. You cannot focus on everything. A weak mind tries to juggle too many priorities, spreading itself so thin that nothing meaningful ever gets accomplished. A strong mind narrows its attention like a laser, identifying the most important task and cutting away everything that doesn't serve it. Clarity creates direction, and direction makes focus possible. Without clarity, your mind becomes vulnerable to every distraction because it doesn't know what to resist. With clarity, distractions lose their power because you are anchored to a purpose. Once you have clarity, the next step is discipline. Focus is not something that simply appears when you need it. It is something you train by forcing yourself to return to the task even when your attention drifts. Imagine training a wild horse. At first, it wants to run in every direction, but with repetition and control, it learns to obey. Your mind is the same. At first, it will resist. It will look for excuses to wander, to check your phone, to daydream. But each time you pull it back, each time you command it to stay where you want it, you are strengthening your focus muscle. Over time, what was once difficult becomes natural, and your ability to lock in grows stronger. Another element of focus is environment. You cannot expect to build unshakable focus while surrounding yourself with constant interruptions. A cluttered space creates a cluttered mind, and a noisy environment feeds distraction. Those who master focus are intentional about the spaces they create. They eliminate unnecessary noise. They design their environment for productivity, and they protect their time with boundaries. They know that focus is too precious to be left vulnerable to every demand that comes knocking. Protecting your environment is protecting your mental energy, and without that protection, even the strongest willpower will eventually collapse under distraction. The greatest enemy of focus is not always external noise, but internal noise. Doubt, fear, and impatience can be louder than any notification. How many times have people abandoned their focus because the inner voice said, "This is taking too long," or "Maybe this isn't working," or "What if you fail?" Building unshakable focus requires silencing those inner interruptions just as much as silencing the external ones. When you commit to a target, you must learn to push those voices aside and stay locked in until you see results. This is why focus and faith are connected, because you cannot stay focused if you don't believe the effort will pay off. There is also a psychological shift that happens when you develop focus. The more you train yourself to stay locked on a task, the more you realize how powerful it feels to direct your energy deliberately. Most people live in reaction mode, pulled by whatever demand comes next. Focus pulls you out of that reactive state and into a proactive one. Instead of being at the mercy of circumstances, you become the one shaping outcomes. That feeling of control strengthens confidence, and that confidence further reinforces your ability to focus. It becomes a cycle of empowerment. Focus builds results, results build confidence, confidence strengthens focus. Unshakable focus also requires the ability to say no. Every yes to distraction is a no to progress. Most people fail not because they didn't have the ability, but because they couldn't protect their attention from being scattered. They said yes to too many demands, too many unnecessary commitments, too many interruptions disguised as opportunities. A strong mind is ruthless with its yes and generous with its no. It understands that every drop of attention wasted on the unimportant is a drop stolen from the mission. Saying no is not selfish, it is strategic. It is the recognition that focus is fragile, and once broken, it takes time to rebuild. The intimidating thing about unshakable focus is that it exposes the weakness of distraction in others. When people see you locked in, refusing to be pulled away, they are confronted with their own lack of discipline. They wonder how you can work so deeply while they can't last 5 minutes without checking their phone. That contrast creates respect, even fear, because focus is rare. In a society where attention is constantly hijacked, a person with unshakable focus looks unstoppable. They move faster, achieve more, and reach heights others only dream of, not because they are inherently better, but because they know how to direct the full power of their mind. Over time, building unshakable focus changes how you see yourself. You stop identifying as someone easily distracted and start seeing yourself as someone who finishes what they start, who follows through no matter what, who cannot be moved once a decision is made. That identity reinforces itself, and soon, focus is not something you do. It becomes who you are. That transformation is what intimidates weakness and attracts opportunity, because everyone wants to work with or follow the person who can stay locked in until the mission is accomplished. Discipline is often misunderstood as a series of isolated actions. Waking up early, hitting the gym, sticking to a schedule, or finishing what you start. But real discipline is not about performing disciplined acts once in a while. It is about transforming discipline into who you are. When discipline becomes your identity, you no longer struggle with constant debates inside your head. You don't waste energy negotiating with yourself about whether you should do something or not. Instead, the action flows naturally because it is simply part of who you have decided to be. The difference between people who rise and those who remain stuck is not willpower alone, but the ability to embody discipline as a permanent part of their character. Think about the way most people approach discipline. They treat it like a temporary tool. They say, "I'll be disciplined until I lose this weight," or "I'll be disciplined until I finish this project," or "I'll be disciplined until I save this amount of money." But as soon as the goal is met, or the pressure eases, the discipline vanishes, and they slide back into old habits. This is because they never allowed discipline to sink deep enough to shape identity. They used it like a costume, something to wear for a short time, rather than a uniform that represents who they are at all times. A strong mind does not play dress-up with discipline. It wears it like skin. When discipline becomes identity, consistency becomes automatic. Most people spend so much mental energy fighting battles of choice. Should I work out today or skip? Should I write or procrastinate? Should I save or spend? But the disciplined identity eliminates that noise because the answer is already decided. If your identity is, "I am a disciplined person," then you don't question whether to follow through. You simply do what aligns with who you are. Just like a professional athlete doesn't decide each morning whether they will train, they simply train because it is who they are, you begin to operate on a higher level of automatic commitment. The power of identity-based discipline is that it protects you when motivation fades. Motivation is temporary, fueled by emotion and circumstance. Some days you wake up excited, but on other days you feel drained and uninspired. If you rely on motivation alone, your results will always fluctuate. But when discipline is who you are, you act regardless of how you feel. Your emotions no longer control your output. You can be tired, discouraged, or stressed, but you still show up because that's what a disciplined person does. This stability is what creates mastery over time, because greatness is rarely built in bursts of inspiration. It is built in the quiet, repetitive acts of discipline that accumulate into strength. Transforming discipline into identity begins with how you speak to yourself. Every time you say, "I'm just not a disciplined person," you are reinforcing a weak identity. But when you begin to affirm, "I am disciplined, I am consistent, I am reliable," you give your mind a new framework to operate from. Identity shapes behavior. If you identify as someone inconsistent, you will unconsciously look for excuses. If you identify as someone disciplined, you will unconsciously look for solutions. This is why changing language is so critical. The words you use to describe yourself are not casual. They are blueprints for your actions. Another part of building this identity is setting standards that are non-negotiable. Weak minds have low standards and endless exceptions. They allow their feelings, their environment, and other people to constantly influence their decisions. But strong minds establish clear standards and refuse to compromise. If you decide that your standard is waking up at 5 a.m., then it doesn't matter if you feel tired, if it's raining outside, or if nobody else is doing it. You still honor the standard because it is who you are. Each time you uphold a standard despite resistance, you carve that identity deeper into your character. Over time, it becomes second nature. Discipline as identity also creates trust. People begin to recognize you as someone dependable, someone who does what they say, someone who can be counted on. This trust is not only external, it is internal. You begin to trust yourself. Many people struggle with confidence because they constantly break promises to themselves. They say they'll change, but they don't. They say they'll start, but they quit. Each broken promise erodes self-respect. But when you become disciplined, you rebuild that trust. You no longer doubt your own word because you live by it. That self-trust radiates confidence, and confidence attracts opportunity. What makes this level of discipline intimidating is that it removes excuses. When others see you living with consistency while they are drowning in inconsistency, it confronts them with their own weakness. They realize that the difference between you and them is not luck, talent, or circumstances, but identity. They are waiting to feel ready, while you are moving forward because readiness is irrelevant when discipline is identity. That contrast creates respect, sometimes even fear, because it proves that you are operating on a level beyond emotion. You are driven by principle. The journey of becoming discipline itself is not about perfection, but about persistence. You will still face moments of weakness, but the difference is that your foundation keeps pulling you back into alignment. Just like a compass always returns to true north, no matter how far it is turned, your identity as a disciplined person always brings you back to order. Over time, this alignment creates momentum. Each act of discipline reinforces your identity, and each identity-based action makes the next act easier. This compounding effect transforms your entire life, your health, your finances, your relationships, your career. Everything improves because the same disciplined identity governs all areas. When you turn discipline into your identity, you no longer live in cycles of start and stop. You are no longer tossed back and forth between moments of progress and seasons of regression. You establish yourself as someone who keeps moving forward, step by step, no matter what. And while others waste years in inconsistency, you accumulate results that multiply over time. That consistency is what creates greatness. Not sudden bursts of effort, not temporary streaks of motivation, but a lifelong identity rooted in discipline. Whispers, "Don't try, you'll embarrass yourself." The feeling in your chest that paralyzes you when opportunity appears. The weight that convinces you to shrink back when you should be stepping forward. The truth is, fear is not the absence of strength. It is the test of it. Everyone feels fear, even the most courageous people you admire. The difference is not that they never feel afraid, but that they refuse to let fear dictate their decisions. To build a mind so strong it scares people, you must train yourself to face fear again and again until it bows to you, until it loses its grip, until it becomes nothing more than a signal that you are heading in the right direction. Fear is natural, but it is also deceptive. It presents itself as protection, convincing you that avoiding risk keeps you safe. But what fear really does is trap you in mediocrity. It keeps you from discovering your true strength, because strength is only revealed when you step into the unknown. When you live controlled by fear, you build a prison with invisible bars. You tell yourself you are free because nothing terrible has happened, but deep down, you know you are limited. You avoid the challenge, the conversation, the risk, the vision. Not because you can't, but because fear convinced you not to try. And every time you surrender to fear, it grows stronger. Every time you avoid what scares you, you reinforce the belief that fear is bigger than you. But when you choose to face fear, something powerful happens. The same way muscles grow through resistance, courage grows through confrontation. The first time you step into what scares you, it feels overwhelming. Your heart races, your hands shake, your mind floods with doubt. But the more you face it, the weaker it becomes. Soon, what once terrified you becomes familiar, and what once seemed impossible becomes routine. This is how fear bows. It doesn't vanish instantly, but it loses its control over you when you refuse to keep feeding it with avoidance. The most dangerous thing about fear is that it disguises itself as wisdom. People say, "Be careful, don't take that risk, don't dream too big, don't step out of line." They dress fear up in polite words, but the root is the same: hesitation. Strong minds can discern the difference between wisdom and fear. Wisdom prepares you, fear paralyzes you. Wisdom says, "Be strategic, take calculated steps." Fear says, "Don't even try." If you cannot separate the two, you will end up calling your fear being realistic and never pursue the life you were created to live. Facing fear requires exposure. You cannot outthink fear from the sidelines. You must step into the very thing you want to avoid. If you are afraid of speaking in public, the only way to break it is to speak again and again until the fear bows. If you are afraid of failing in business, the only way to conquer it is to start, fail, learn, and keep going until failure no longer intimidates you. If you are afraid of rejection, you must put yourself in positions where rejection is possible until it loses its sting. The strong mind understands that fear only has power in avoidance. The moment you confront it, you begin to shrink it. What intimidates people about those who face fear is not that they never tremble, but that they move anyway. When people see someone walk into situations they themselves avoid, it confronts them with their own hesitation. It reveals the chains they have accepted as normal. That is why courageous individuals often appear larger than life, not because they are superhuman, but because they represent the possibility of living free from fear's control. That kind of strength creates an aura that others can feel, because most people are secretly prisoners of fears they have never challenged. Facing fear until it bows to you also builds self-respect. Every time you confront something that scares you, you prove to yourself that you are stronger than you thought. That proof compounds, building confidence that cannot be shaken by external validation. You begin to trust yourself at a deeper level, because you know that no matter what fear whispers, you will act anyway. That trust is what gives people a commanding presence. They are no longer negotiating with fear in silence. They have silenced it with repeated action. And that history of victories, small and large, becomes the foundation of unshakable confidence. Fear is also one of the greatest equalizers in life. Everyone, regardless of background, faces it. But not everyone responds the same way. The majority retreat, a few endure, and an even smaller number advance boldly until fear bows. That last group changes history. They are the inventors, the leaders, the revolutionaries, the visionaries, who refuse to let fear dictate their choices. They felt the same fear as everyone else, but their response set them apart. If you want to be among them, you cannot wait for fear to disappear. You must decide to move while it is still present, knowing that with every step forward, its grip weakens. The truth about fear is that it never truly goes away, but your relationship to it can change completely. It becomes background noise instead of a controlling force. It becomes a challenge instead of a master. It becomes a reminder of growth instead of a reason to retreat. And when others see you walking boldly in the face of what terrifies them, they realize they are looking at a mind that fear has already bowed to, a mind that has earned its strength not by avoiding battle, but by walking straight into it again and again until victory became inevitable. Your mind is the most valuable possession you will ever have. Everything you create, everything you pursue, everything you build in life begins first in your thoughts. If your mind is strong, your life will reflect that strength. If your mind is weak, your life will reveal that weakness. The reason so many people struggle to rise above mediocrity is not because they lack talent, opportunity, or intelligence, but because they leave the gates of their mind unguarded. They allow negativity, fear, and doubt to enter freely, and those invaders build a home inside their thoughts. If you want to build a mind so strong it scares people, you must learn to guard your mind like a fortress, treating it as sacred ground that only the right influences can enter. Imagine a great fortress built on the highest hill, surrounded by massive walls, with watchtowers standing tall. That fortress does not allow anyone to walk through the gates unchecked. Every person who seeks entry is examined, and only those who bring value, honor, or protection are admitted. Your mind should function in the same way. The thoughts, ideas, conversations, and information you consume are either allies that strengthen your spirit or enemies that weaken your resolve. Yet most people leave their mental gates wide open. They scroll endlessly through social media, absorbing gossip, comparison, and lies. They sit with people who complain, criticize, and doubt, and they allow those words to settle in their minds like seeds. Over time, those seeds grow into weeds that choke out the vision and discipline needed to succeed. Guarding your mind means taking responsibility for everything you allow in, because whatever enters will eventually shape what comes out. You guard your mind first by becoming aware of what is trying to influence you. Not every conversation is worth your attention. Not every book or show deserves your time, and not every person should have the right to plant their opinions in your head. When you understand the power of influence, you begin to realize that the people around you are either sharpening your sword or dulling it. The news you consume is either preparing you for awareness or drowning you in fear. The entertainment you choose is either inspiring you or numbing you. Mental strength requires vigilance. Just as soldiers patrol the walls of a fortress to protect against invasion, you must patrol the gates of your mind, watching carefully for anything that weakens your focus, your belief, or your clarity. Guarding your mind also requires selective exposure. It's not just about avoiding negativity, it's about deliberately surrounding yourself with strength. A fortress is not built only to keep enemies out, but to create a space where the people inside can thrive. Fill your mind with knowledge that expands your vision, words that inspire courage, and ideas that push you to grow. Study stories of people who overcame impossible odds, and let their victories strengthen your resolve. Spend time with individuals who challenge you to rise higher, not those who comfort you in staying the same. Listen to voices that align with your purpose, not those that scatter your focus. Every input matters, and each choice builds or weakens the walls of your fortress. One of the most dangerous breaches in the fortress of the mind comes from self-sabotage. Many people guard against external voices but forget to monitor their own inner dialogue. They allow their thoughts to repeat patterns of insecurity, regret, and shame. Those whispers become louder than any encouragement, and over time, they erode the foundation of confidence. Guarding your mind means learning to silence that inner critic and replace it with empowering truth. It means catching yourself when negative self-talk tries to slip in unnoticed and refusing to let it take root. Just as a fortress commander would never allow an enemy disguised as a friend to walk through the gates, you cannot allow destructive self-talk to disguise itself as honesty. You must be ruthless in rejecting anything, even from your own lips, that weakens your spirit. Another principle of guarding your mind is consistency. A fortress that leaves its gates open only once a month will eventually be invaded. Strength comes from daily vigilance. That means protecting your mornings from distractions that cloud your clarity, protecting your nights from inputs that poison your rest, and protecting your days from influences that drag your energy downward. Small breaches may not seem dangerous at first, but they accumulate until your fortress crumbles from within. Consistency is what makes your defenses impenetrable. It is the daily choice to choose discipline over distraction, vision over confusion, and growth over comfort. Guarding your mind like a fortress also means understanding that not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Too many people hand out keys to anyone who offers an opinion, but not every opinion is valid, not every criticism is worth considering, and not every compliment should be absorbed. A strong mind does not swing like a door between praise and rejection. It stands firm, knowing that the foundation of identity cannot be handed to others. You choose who speaks into your life. You choose what information you digest, and you choose what beliefs you allow to settle. When people see that you are unmoved by gossip, unaffected by trends, and undistracted by noise, they realize your mind is guarded by walls they cannot penetrate. The power of a guarded mind is that it multiplies everything else you do. When your thoughts are clear, your focus sharpens. When your beliefs are strong, your actions gain power. When your inner world is disciplined, your outer world aligns. But when your mind is unguarded, even the greatest opportunities can be lost. A negative seed planted at the wrong time can convince you to quit just before your breakthrough. A distraction unchecked can pull you away from the path of greatness. That is why guarding your mind is not optional. It is essential. It is the very difference between rising into your potential or living trapped beneath it. Your mind, like a fortress, was never meant to be fragile. It was designed to be unshakable, a stronghold where faith, vision, and courage reside. But it requires your command. No one else can protect it for you. No one else can filter the thoughts you choose. No one else can decide what you entertain or reject. You are the gatekeeper, the protector, the commander of the most powerful territory you own. And when you guard it with diligence, nothing, no opinion, no failure, no fear, no distraction, can overthrow the strength that grows inside.